Today, we're joined by Rick Warner, a top producing real estate broker associated with nearly 15 years of experience and ranked among the top 1% nationwide. Rick specializes in working alongside estate attorneys and family law professionals to handle complex real estate situations, from probate and trust administration to property valuations and asset dispositions. With deep expertise in the North Bay market, and a strong client-first approach, he brings clarity and strategy to what are often highly emotional and complicated transactions. So, Rick, it's great to have you here today. Where are you calling in from?
Joe, it's great to be here, and I appreciate you asking me to be on the show. I am in Northern California mostly, and we'll get into this in the podcast, but I actually serve the entire state of California, and I'm gonna leave that as a teaser for your audience. Are like, wait, what realtor could actually serve an entire state? And I'm telling you, I'd be the first one to question that as well. So we'll get into that a little bit later. But I actually live in Northern California, and I live in San Diego as well.
Okay, so you're quite the traveler. That's great.
On a lot of
Very
on a lot
intrigued.
of planes. That's right. Exactly. It's a
Very
good life. It's a
intrigued.
good life. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, before I get into all my deep questions, can you tell me a little bit about you? Like, what got you into this industry, and what's your
Yeah.
story, and then what's your why?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I think I got into this business the way I'm going to say most people get into real estate, which is I failed at a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, oh, I guess I'll get my real estate license. That seems fun. That's pretty accurate. I basically I bought a home one time in California. It seemed pretty easy. I'm like, I should be doing this. I was a financial advisor at the time, and so that's kind of how I got in the business. I wasn't crushing it as a financial advisor. I had not had any real success other places. I was one of these like has potential guys. Like that was all of my report cards was has potential, doesn't use it. And then I got into real estate, and it really fit me like a glove. And it was 2004. So about 22 years ago, 21, 22 years ago. And right away, I actually had some success. Now, what I found out later was my success was largely based on a really great real estate market. It wasn't me, it was the market. And so there was a painful story that we can get into in a minute if you'd like. But that's how I got into the business.
Okay. Yeah. No, share. Let's love to hear the painful story, because I think that also allows listeners to know where you came from and how you earned what you have today.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. So what happened was in September of 2009, September 2nd, actually, was my 40th birthday. The market had, if anybody, and if any of the listeners were in the market, were you around, Joe, in the 2008 real estate market? Were you doing anything then?
Yeah, I was actually in the publishing industry,
Okay.
doing builder marketing. So I
Oh,
would
builder
say,
marketing. Okay. You're,
yeah, one of the
you're on the
first
front
things to
line.
go down.
Totally. Right.
Home
We're
builders.
tootling along. Everything's great. And then in 2007, things start to be a little bit weird. In 2008, September, actually, in 2008, the market falls off, right? The real estate market, the stock market, everything was just a world that nobody in the business at that moment had ever experienced before, right? There was the Great Depression, 1929, and this was called the Great Recession as we look back now. And of course, I wasn't prepared for it. So by fast forward to my 40th birthday, September 2009, a year later, we've been kind of living on our line of credit. I had racked up a bunch of credit card debt. I had back taxes. I had bought in 2006 at exactly the wrong time, $1 million house, which at the time really meant something in California. Now it's no big deal, but at the time it was a big deal for us. And I wasn't selling any houses. I went from selling however many millions of dollars that in 2009, I sold $2.9 million worth of real estate, which is not like I do that now every month or more than that, even regularly every month. And so it just gives you context of how bad it was. Meanwhile, I have three little kids. I have a stay-at-home wife, and it was brutal. And then on my birthday, I get a notice from the bank saying, hey, you know that line of credit you've been living off of? We're taking that back. You don't have that anymore.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, I couldn't even pay my mortgage. And it was just like, it was a gut punch. And I was in big trouble financially. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And to say I was terrified is an understatement. And by that time, like in our area, and I think it was very similar in Florida and some other places, like half of the transactions were what are called distress sales, which if you're only 10 years in the real estate business, you may not even know what that is. But a distress sale is some version of the people could not pay their mortgage. It was a short sale. It was what's called an REO or a bank or a foreclosure. And that's what we were dealing with. And it was a mess. And not only was I in the business of trying to figure out short sales and foreclosures, but my own house had gone from $1 million to 650. We had put down 400 grand. Like all of our equity was gone. And if I didn't figure out a way to pay my mortgage, we were going to lose that money, and it was terrifying. And so what became clear to me was there was no better opportunity for me, for a guy like me, with whatever my background was, it was in real estate. And what I really needed to do was figure out how to be great at being a real estate agent. And what that was going to require was me being uncomfortable as I learned how to do these things that I didn't want to do. Somehow
Yeah.
I'd had some success in real estate without really, learning how to generate leads, because the market had been so good. And so I signed up for this coaching course, and it was a game changer for me. It was a great course, but also I was in that place where it was like I was willing to do anything to save our financial situation. And I learned how to do some stuff in there that just totally changed the whole trajectory of my career.
Wow, that's a crazy story, and I can certainly relate to the times and the challenges that we're
Yeah.
faced there on a regular basis. So that is something that I think people are now fearing somewhat today as well, right?
Yeah.
So tell me then, you go through this pain and you go to this coaching seminar and it changes your trajectory. How does that fit into your role today and to the bigger picture of where your business is now and what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what happened for me was when I say change my trajectory, what I mean was that I really learned how to do the thing that most agents don't know how to do, they're not willing to do, and that is to generate leads. And the way you generate leads is by talking to people and asking for business. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted people to just magically know that I was a realtor and that they should hire me. And
The
it
best
just
way,
didn't.
right?
Yeah, right. I wish it was that way. Of course, if that were the case, we wouldn't have, like we've talked about off camera, 75% of the agents last year did zero transactions and another 10% did 1 to 4 transactions. That's not a living. I don't care what state you live in. That's not going to work. And so you have this very, small group of people that are doing almost all of the transactions. I'm fortunate enough to be in that, but I think what I would want listeners to know is I too was part of that, that group that wasn't doing any deals. And it wasn't until I learned how to get outside of my comfort zone, to learn how to talk to people and ask for business and do all the things that I was terrified of doing, that I sucked at doing, that I had not done in my other businesses in the past. All my failure came from me not being willing to get out of my comfort zone and learn how to be great at something. And so how that translates into my business today is that I know that in the worst market, I can create business, because that's what ended up happening in 2010. I had a banner year. And it only got more productive from there, where I was able to, hire a team to work with me. And I consistently, do between 25 and $30 million a year in real estate, which is, there's plenty of people doing more than that, but it puts me in the top 1% or higher than that in the country. And that all started with me being coached that one time. Now, I went on to continue to be coached. I got all kinds of different coaches. I put systems and processes in place. I did all the things that you would want to hear about, but it started with me learning and being willing to be outside of my comfort zone and learning how to have those conversations and being willing, in that class, we had to have 20 outgoing ask for business conversations a day. Can you imagine that? If you're not doing that at all, that's a lot. And especially because it was an 8-week course. So that means that 800 times, 800 different times in 8 weeks, I asked people for business. But guess what? As a result of doing that, people that I didn't even know, I got business. And people that I did know, I got business. People that I already knew, but they weren't going to give me a business unless I actually asked them. Right. So that was a big part of the game-changing world that I live in.
That's very interesting, and I can see a lot of challenge that I know realtors face with the big thing of asking for the business. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the large bottlenecks that we experience, and it's also interesting that you talk about the coaching program because if you take a simulation to any professional sport, These
Yeah,
athletes are at the top of their game. They still require a coach to guide them, right? And
that's right.
that's not something that's perceived as much in other professions other than sports outside of youth sports, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I
So
think I appreciate the analogy, and it is one of those things that I feel like I cannot coach myself. I'm a coach now, but I still don't coach myself. I still have coaches. I'm still in masterminds. I'm still, like we talked about this off camera. I still want to be coachable, even though I have arguably a very sustainable, like, why would I need coaching now? Well, the answer is I still need to learn and grow. I still need to be on top of the next thing. And I still need somebody to help me be accountable to what it is I say I'm going to do. Because that's the other next piece of this is there's the part of, like, I don't even know what to say or who to say it to. But then there's so many people, like, it's easy to find out now. There's YouTube. I mean, YouTube didn't exist when I did all this stuff. Now it's like, okay, I know what to say. I know what to do, but how do I get myself to actually do it? How do I get myself
yeah,
to do the things I need to do day in and day out? And that was a whole nother thing that I had to create on my own to, because just knowing what I needed to do wasn't enough. It was, how am I going to make sure that I do the thing every day?
sure, sure. That's great information. We know that part of your business is doing the real estate transactions. The other part is doing the coaching. Outside of knowing what your typical day is, because I'm sure that changes a lot, what is the key aspects that make your business successful in both the real estate and in the coaching? How do you drive business, and what strategies are you using to get those leads?
Yeah, I think at the core, right, there's a lot of different things around coaching. There's mindset, there's tactical stuff, there's conversational, what kind of conversations you want to have, what are the right words to say, what do you not say, and all that. So there's a lot around that within the coaching. But at the core of it for me is the accountability piece. That was the thing that was really, really missing. At one point, I was paying $3,000 a month to be coached by this really great coaching company. Lots of great content, lots of great ideas, a lot of, like, hey, here's the things that you really need to do. But the accountability was every 2 weeks. I had to turn in a sheet saying, hey, I did all these things. And I just didn't do it. I mean, I was like, 2 weeks
Hmm.
was too far apart for me to, like, my ADD brain was like, that's a lot. And so I changed this to a daily accountability. And this is something that your listeners can do. They don't need to sign up for any programs. And the fundamental part of it goes like this. In the morning, I commit to, and I have a list that I use, but you could just write a piece of paper, you could make a text message, whatever. But I have a list that I commit to doing certain amount of personal development things and a certain amount of professional development things. I do the list Monday through Friday. And on my list, like, for example, I have it right here, but on my list, I have my personal development stuff has meditation, spiritual, reading, and then exercise. And it's actually quantified. And then on my professional, I have, how many times I'm going to talk to somebody today, how many face to faces, how many personal thank you cards I'm going to write, right? I use that thing every day. And you go, well, so what, Rick? Everybody has a list. That's no big deal. Well, maybe everybody doesn't, but maybe people have a list. But here's what's different about it. I take that and I send it out to an accountability group. I send that out to a group of people and I go, hey, I am committing to doing this thing. I sign it like a contract. And then as I go through the day and I do those things, I check the boxes. And when I'm done, I write 3 things I'm grateful for. I write a little mini journal and I send it back out to that same accountability group. And then I've done the thing I said I was going to do, because fundamentally, I kind of suck at being accountable to myself. Even with
Mhm.
all my success and all the other things, me telling myself I'm going to do it, I get too wrapped up and I don't feel like it anymore. I get distracted. I forget whatever it is that gets in the way of me doing the things on a daily basis. And that daily navigator keeps me on track. Now that's a big whole thing, but fundamentally all it is my point. Tell somebody what you're going to do and then do it and then tell them you did the thing. Like that, fundamentally that's the thing that really makes the difference for me, actually getting things done versus talking about getting things done. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. So in the industry that we're in, real estate, there have been some call it major and some call it just different shifts in how business is done. We know the market is kind of down. There's a lot of properties, at least in Florida and in other states, that are overpriced because the sellers are still in the mindset of maybe 2 years ago. What are the major shifts that you're seeing right now, and how real estate intersects with change and marketing, and what are the bottlenecks that still need to be overcome?
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, what I would say, boots on the ground. Yeah, you're right. The market's different, right? It's been a little wonky since the rates started going crazy, whatever that was, 3 or 4 years ago. And we had the discrepancy of, everybody has a mortgage at 3%, and then the new buyers are at 6 or 7 or 8% at one point it was. And so you couldn't get those 3% people to sell because why would they trade in for a 6 or 7% mortgage? So it kept the inventory down. And that therefore kept the prices up, even though the cost of money doubled. It was crazy. So it's been this weird like give and take in California. What we're seeing is that the rate, the housing prices has been kind of level, and there's exceptions to that. I'll just tell you, you may not believe this, but right now in San Francisco, we've got houses that are going for $1 and $2 million over the asking price.
Yes, I have a friend that just bought his first house after renting there for over 20 years, and he's not thrilled about it.
One in 2 million over. Okay. So, and these
Yeah,
are not like 10 million going for 11 or 12. These are 3 million going for 4 or 5 million. That's a crazy thing that's happening. That's happening right now. But also here, we're just across the Golden Gate Bridge north of there, and by about 30 minutes, and it's a little more flat. It's definitely not that. I have 3 listings right now that are right around $1 million, and they're not selling, right? So it's totally across the board. But
right.
from a tactical standpoint, I think what is missing is two things. We have this experience, especially if you've only been in the business for say 10 years, where it was all like, if you had a listing, it was going to sell. It was great. It was like cash the check, basically, right? As long as you priced
Right.
it close to right, it was going to be great. We've got to, as an industry, learn how to be in communication with our sellers in a very straight and honest way upfront. And then, because we're all doing the best we can, I assume we're all doing the best we can to price it right to start with. But assuming you have that great conversation with them, to be real with them up front, even then you could still get it wrong, right? Like I have
Sure.
straight conversations with my sellers. I don't buy any listings. I don't tell people what they want to hear. I price these 3 listings that are not selling. I price them and they're not selling, right? So then the next thing is we have to get good at being in communication with our sellers when it's not selling, right? The number one complaint in the National Association of Realtors for clients is that the agent took the listing, the house didn't sell, and they never heard from their agent. That
Mm,
they were the ones that had to reach out. They were the ones that had to find out what was going on. And of
yeah,
course, what do they do when they're doing that? They're sitting there like, what's going on? I don't have any information. Nobody's telling me. And then they start thinking of their own solutions, right? Like my agent should pay for more advertising, which is not at all how houses sell, right? But of course, they're left with like, I need to do something. So if you are in communication with your sellers on a weekly basis, so my habit is all my buyers and my sellers, regardless of the market, but especially right now, they hear from me or my team every Monday. They get an update. This is what's going on. So for listings, here's all the listings that came on in your neighborhood. Here's all the listings that went into contract in the neighborhood. Here's everything that closed in the neighborhood. Here's how many showings we had. And of course, here's how many offers. Of course, they already know how many offers we would have had or not had. But if I'm staying in front of them and I'm being in communication and I'm being straight with them, oh, and all the feedback if we did have any offers. I mean, if we did have showings. So now they're in the ballgame. They know what's going on. And so when it comes time for me to go, hey, you know what? We've been on the market for 3 weeks and we are not getting any activity. I think it's time to lower the price. They just agree because they've been in communication with it. There's no story about, well, you're not doing enough. Like they know exactly what I'm doing. So that's one of the things that I would offer to agents as we learn how to be in this kind of say new market where maybe some of us aren't used to houses that don't just sell right away. That's the
right.
way you handle it.
So you also have some expertise in the area of working with probates and
Yes.
family
Yeah.
law and real estate like that. So I want to dial in on that for a minute
Sure.
too, because I know our listeners, they're looking into those things as other options too. How has the increase in like in our area, the increase in out-of-state heirs and remote trustees or more complex family dynamic impacted your approach on deals and client communication?
Yeah. So kind of not unlike me getting into real estate in the first place, I just kind of ended up in a couple of estate transactions where I had created a relationship with estate attorneys and then they of course gave me transactions. That's what I wanted. And all of a sudden I'm like, how does this work? And there's all these kind of nuances and rules around giving notification and what kind of disclosures are required, and how do you handle trustees, and your fiduciary responsibility is slightly, I mean, you always have the same fiduciary responsibility, but it's a little more connected to being a fiduciary, where you might have a trustee who is out of state, for example, and they don't know anything about anything. They've never seen the house. In fact, one of the first ones we got was exactly that. It was a trustee out of town, didn't know anything about the town. It was an aunt that left her the house. The aunt had died unexpectedly. There was no prep at all for this house. And all of a sudden, this younger, she's like in her early 20s, inherited this house in California. I mean, we should all be so lucky, but she didn't know what to do with this thing. And so it was my
Sure.
job to help her navigate through every single detail of what was necessary. And she literally never came out. She never saw the house. She never had to do anything. We took care of everything. And the estate attorney was just so happy with how we handled that. She kept sending us business. And so from there, we started to go, I guess if this is working, let's really create a business model out of that. So we got our trust and probate certification. We started creating systems and processes specifically around handling probates and trusts. And then we started going to other estate attorneys and paid fiduciaries and actively soliciting them. And it's become a very good source of business for us. And what's great about it, this is going to sound a little morbid, but people die not seasonally; they just die. And so, one of the challenges we have in this business is, our overall inventory is down 40% off of its high during COVID. So that's 40% less deals out there. And we're mostly dealing with circumstantial transactions, right? In other words, because there's such a discrepancy between where most people's mortgage is and where interest rates are, most people are not choosing to buy and sell a house like they would in a normal market where it's flat. So in other words, somebody goes, hey, you know what? I like that other neighborhood across town. It's a bigger house. It's a smaller house. Let's sell this one and buy that one because the rate is going to be the same. Well, that business is off the table. So what's left is death, divorce, change of job, and then cash buyers. So they're all circumstantial, right? Other than cash. So this is one of those avenues. And with the baby boomers all aging, my parents are baby boomers, there's a huge wealth transfer. Going all the way back to when I was a financial advisor, they were talking about this wealth transfer of the baby boomers. Well, it's even more so now because they own the real estate. They frequently inherited it from their family. And so, how those assets get disseminated is frequently through a trust. So you may have created a relationship with those baby boomers, but then they're dead. And now it's like,
Right.
yeah, they're not going to call you. It's the trustee or the estate attorney that's going to be reaching out to you. So it's a good business model to be in front of those trustees and those fiduciaries and those estate attorneys rather than the people that are actually going to pass away, because when they're dead, they don't get to decide. If they use a trust, they can designate you in, which we've had happen, but that doesn't happen frequently.
So then I guess my question would be, what's working really well, or what is the best approach in building relationships with attorneys and handling these transactions?
Well, you know what? That's a great question. And you answered it yourself, which is building relationships. So the question is, how do you build relationships with people? And again, that is an art that can be taught. So I go back to one of the greatest relationships that I have is it was a lender who cold called me. I'm not kidding you, 8 times. He just kept cold calling me. And I was like, this guy, man, I don't know what his problem is. Like, hey, I'm clearly saying no to you. And on the 8th
Mm-hmm.
call, I'm like, okay, whatever. I will meet with you. And he met with me. And I said, kind of selfishly and immature, I was newer in the business. This is right around 2008, actually, when I still thought I was a big shot and I'd had some success. And he goes, I said, how many referrals are you going to give me if you're my preferred lender? He goes, I'm not going to give you any. And I'm like, well, you're not very good at this. Like, you should be telling me you're going to do something. He goes, bro, I don't want to start a relationship off in a dishonest manner. I'm like, okay. He goes, if I told you I was going to give you referrals and I need 10 Rick Warners for my businesses to be successful, how am I going to give 10 people referrals? Is that even possible? I go, I don't even know. He goes, it's not. I can't give you that. I can't promise you any business. He goes, what do you really want? I go, I want to do more business. He goes, okay, so what if I teach you how to do more business?
Hmm.
I'm like, oh, well, that actually, yeah, I guess that's smarter. It's kind of that whole, how about if I teach you how to fish rather than give you fish, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but what was great about this guy is that he then followed that up and he was genuinely interested in the success of my business. Before he got any transactions from me, before he got any referrals from me,
Mm.
he was just super in tune to what is going on with your business. How can I help you succeed? Okay. Now, this is
Mhm.
2008, like I said, and he just kept doing stuff like that. He would bring me books. He would say, "Hey, are you trying this?" He would say, "Hey, do you have a business plan? How many deals you want to do next year? How many calls are you making? Who you, that class that I told you about, he took the class with me. He
Oh,
went with me and did the class, right? So now fast forward to today. This guy's one of my best friends. We have literally referred each other over 100 million,
wow.
hundreds of millions of dollars. Okay. Me and that guy, we go to trips together. We've spoke on stages together. He's like a big, huge speaker now. He was like right after that, he had a huge meltdown, just like I did. He lost his house to foreclosure. This guy's one of the most. His name's Jeremy Forcier. You can look him up. He's one of the most successful mortgage people in the world now, right? And but I go back to, he created that relationship by being of service, right? And really
Hmm.
coming from the place of making a contribution to my business. So, and by the way, he sends me tons of business. Like he couldn't give me that model, but now he does give me a bunch of business. And I've actually bought and sold 4 homes for him. My last house I helped him buy was 4.5 million bucks. His
Hmm.
personal house, right? So that, but that all came from relationship. And so that model of how can I make a difference in your business is the greatest way to create relationships with people is how can I make a contribution? Don't go with your hand out. Don't, hey, send
Yeah.
me business. Don't offer bullshit things like, yeah, I'm gonna give you referrals. We'll be in exchange. No, don't do that. With my estate attorneys, I don't offer them referrals. I offer them that I'm going to be the greatest person on their team so that their client experience, that they feel really great about sending their business because their client is going to be well served. But before I could even do that, I needed to be interested in their business.
Hmm.
How can I help you with your business? How can I
Yeah.
show you? Maybe I can take things from what I've learned, creating a business, because every business owner has the same dilemma, right? They have the business they like to do. They're an accountant. They're great at counting numbers, but they still need clients to count the numbers for. Well,
Sure.
accountants aren't great at getting business, right? Attorneys also not great at getting business. So realtors theoretically are good at getting business. Show them how you're good at getting business, teach them how to do that. That's what I do with fiduciaries. I coach them for free. I'm just like, hey, what are you doing with your business? Tell me how you're getting business. Tell me how you're creating relationships. And
Hmm.
then there's this kind of reciprocating where they're like, people do business who they know, like, and trust. That's not new. Well, how do you create know, like, and trust? You come from contribution. You make a difference in your life. You don't make it all about you. So that's the model that has really worked for me.
That's great. With all those things you got going on, which metrics or outcomes are you most focused on improving right now in your business? Is it a deal velocity, or is it client experience, referral growth, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think for me, it's so I have a team because two things. One is I want to make sure I'm doing the things at this point in my career that I love to do in the business and that I'm great at doing. And so having the systems and processes and the people on my team to do all the other things that either A, I suck at, or B, I don't like doing. So what that means is I get to really focus on client relationships, negotiating deals, and managing my team. And that's my goal, is to just do those three things. So anything has to do with admin. I don't write offers. I don't show houses. I rarely do open houses. I don't work nights and weekends. So keeping that shit tight is my number one thing, is to make sure that I was just on a call with my team and that we have a new member of our team. And I was asking her, how's it going? And I made it safe for her to say, actually, there was this thing where I brought up and you guys just kind of shut me down. And I was like, oh, well, that is not what we're about here. And I was
Hmm.
glad that she felt safe enough to say, hey, this isn't working. And then we had this big conversation about how we're going to make sure that doesn't happen anymore, so that you can feel like you are a collaborative member of this team, not just somebody being told what to do, as an example. So that's a big part of it. The other thing is making sure that I don't rest on my laurels when it comes out to lead generation, because as the team leader, my job, because I have all those other things in place, those systems in place, is for me to go out and create more relationships. And where I'm having fun doing that is in the fiduciary world, where I'm actively, regularly reaching out and creating relationships with fiduciaries for the reasons that we just talked about. So yeah, that's definitely what I'm focused on right now.
If there was one major challenge you could solve today in your processes, whether operational or growth related, what would that be? That one thing.
You know, I feel like we are on top of it. So I don't have that dilemma. I would say that the thing that keeps me up at night, maybe is another way to ask that question is, how do I get agents? How can I be a more effective coach? I coach a lot of agents, and it's so mind boggling to me, their willingness to continue to resist what's going to make a difference in their life. I don't
Mm-hmm.
understand. Here they are. They're not doing enough business. They want to do more. They have this life that they want to live. And I'm giving them, here's the playbook, right? Not only this, the playbook, but here's how you can even be accountable inside the playbook. And the resistance is fascinating, to be on the front lines and seeing, well, this is why 75% of the people don't do any deals, right? They have this fantasy of what it's like to be in a real estate business. They want to have flexibility of their hour. I talk to so many agents and think about getting in business. What do you want to do in real estate? I want to have flexible hours, and I love watching real estate shows, or I love showing houses. Well, okay, that's not how the business works.
Yeah.
And the flexibility hours to me says, I don't really want to be held accountable. I don't want to work that hard. And so then you end up with what we end up with. So that's what keeps me up at night. What is the mechanism that how can I create the mindset that shows people, hey, you can do this. You
Mm-hmm.
can be like me or these other successful agents. This isn't as much of a reach as you think it is. Or yes, it is hard, but you could do it too. That's what I'm constantly trying to create in my coaching and in my conversations and my communication, in my, on my Instagram account. That's the thing that keeps me up at night.
Podcast before we go.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I guess I would say kind of along that line is that we are all, and including myself, like, I have come a long way and I have a long way to go. That puts me in the right place, right? Where I'm not like shaming myself for what I haven't done yet. And I'm not like, I've arrived, so I'm uncoachable. Like, I'm in that place of coachability, but also acknowledging, hey, I really have come a long way. Everybody, all of us, no matter where we're at, we can do so much more than we think we can do. And what's keeping us back is actually the habitual way that we feel, our habitual way that we see the world and how we react to it. And so cracking that open of this, like, this is just habit. Like, whatever it is that's slowing you down, whatever it's slowing me down, it's at the center of it is a habit. It's a habit of how we react to something. And knowing that we can actually undo that habit is like, once you really get that, then all of a sudden the world's your oyster. So I want everybody to know you're capable. Like, whatever story your brain is telling you about how you can't, or you're not that person, or I'm an introvert, or I can't ask for business, or whatever the story is, it's actually not true. It's not objectively accurate, and anything's possible.
Very good. Well, as we've been speaking to Rick Warner from his real estate practice, Rick, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate you sharing your insights, what you're seeing in the market, and how you're helping clients navigate the complex real estate situations that you get involved with. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me, and I'm looking forward to. Oh, by the way, if anybody, you can follow me on Instagram. The Rick Warner is my Instagram, and you're always welcome to Joe will put my phone number somewhere. You're always welcome to just reach out to me, and I'm always down to help people.
Thanks again.